Welcome to What a Creep, the show with Margot Donahue and Sonia Mansfield, talking about creeps from the past to the present.
This is your quick guide to the biggest creeps, jerks, assholes, and losers, the best of the worst.
From two nice ladies who want the world to be a little less creepy. Welcome back to What a Creep. This is Margot Donahue, and my cohort in creepitude, as always, is Sonia Mansfield. Hey, Sonia.
Hello, my friend.
Hello, my friend, and happy Halloween, everybody.
Ooh.
We're doing a very spooky episode. So Sonia and I also co-host a show called Dorking Out, and we talked about the movie Scream. And then Sonia said, this is also based on true crime story. I'm going to look it up and talk about it on What a Creep, which is what we're going to do today. Let me just go through a little bit of housekeeping first. We do have a basic Facebook page. We use that just as a place for people to complain about our language. We do use salty language here.
Fuck yeah, we do.
If you don't like that, please just avoid us at all costs. We have a private Facebook group.
Avoid our podcast and us in person, by the way.
Everything about us. Just don't even. Yes. We have a private Facebook group. We have a few questions that we ask you to answer, and then you could come on in, and we try to keep it as a nice, safe spot for the show. We're on Twitter at CreepPod because somebody had What a Creep for 10 years and never used it.
Creep.
We have an Instagram page, What a Creep Podcast, and we have an old-timey email, whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com. And if you would like some stickers, and I promise I'm going to get those out next week. I've had some people asking lately. Send us an email, whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com. I don't care where you are in the world. I will make sure you get them. I will send them out to you because we really care. We appreciate all of you that listen to us, and also all of you that leave us 5-star reviews on iTunes. Sonia, we've got some great names this week.
My favorite. Do it.
We got That'll Do, Saucy.
That's a great one. Saucy.
Charlene X and 2. And here's my favorite of the week, Knitter's Knuckle. They all gave us 5-star reviews on iTunes.
Sounds vaguely dirty.
I kind of love it.
Knitter's. I'm like, yeah, and then we did the old Knitter's Knuckle.
Actually, I have a story, but I'll tell you off the air. Anyway, okay. We also have a Patreon page. Our first 2 seasons are behind the Patreon wall. We have a couple of also bonus episodes we do every month. We have one that's due this week. We're going to get it out to you this weekend, Halloween weekend. Just go to Patreon.
Yep, that's where we talk about the Knitter's Knuckle.
I'll tell you what that is, actually. Sign up for our Patreon. The October 31st episode. I'll tell you what that's all about. I was friend of them. Anyway, so you tell them about the website, please.
You could go to whatacreeppodcast.com, and it's everything you ever wanted to know about our podcast, but maybe you were afraid to ask. It has links to all of our episodes except for season 1 and 2, which are behind the wall. And it has a link to our merch shop where you could get T-shirts and masks. By the way, some of my coworkers recently bought our face masks with the maybe next year, and they're way out in Australia, and they were vouching that the masks were super comfortable and that they love them, and that made me so happy. So thank you to Rachel for supporting the show. That was so awesome. And yeah, the masks are great. Do it. All right, this episode is going to be Sonia's warning me. It's pretty intense. I didn't look anything up except for images. And I just mean like newspaper images. I don't mean anything else. Yeah. So what are the trigger warnings for this episode? Yes, everyone, please take care of yourself. Trigger warnings include child abuse, rape, mutilation, and decapitation.
Yikes. Okay.
Yeah. No, seriously, take care of yourselves. So like we said, we did Scream for Dorking Out. We had no idea that this was based, like the screenwriter for Scream, Kevin Williamson, was inspired by the case of the Gainesville Ripper. It turns out he wasn't the only one. When I started researching this, there is a book called Drifter. It is also based on the Gainesville murders. And there is a song it's called the Harold Rollins Hymn. And it's from the John 5 album, The Devil Knows My Name. It was also inspired by this crime. So what is it about this case that inspires? Y'all be the judge. We're going to talk about Danny Rolling. He's known as the Gainesville Ripper.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Sonia. We should also tell everybody, we always end the episode with someone who's not a creep.
Yes.
Just Max is also, he co-signs that. We also, so please keep that in mind. We will have a non-creep at the end of our episode.
Yes. Sources for this episode: Oxygen, All That's Interesting, ABC News. There's an ABC 2020 episode that actually recently aired. I watched it on Hulu, and it was about this case in particular. I also went to the Nerdist, where they talk about the Scream connection. People love me some old people. Mm-hmm. Biography, and of course, Wikipedia. Always Wikipedia. So Daniel Harold Rolling was born May 26, 1954 in Shreveport, Louisiana. His father, James Rolling, was a police officer, and his mother, Claudia, was a housewife. Rolling's father, Danny's father, he was a real prick. He told Danny all the time that he was unwanted, that he was a mistake.
Oh, Jesus.
And he abused his wife. Ugh. And he started beating Danny almost immediately after he was born. One time beating him for not crawling properly.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
He was one. His dad is a piece of shit. One time, Danny's mother went to the hospital after his father tried to make her cut herself with razor blades. And another time, his father pinned Danny to the ground. He handcuffed him, and he had his fellow police officers take Danny away for the crime of being a family embarrassment.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
He is a fucking monster, too. He is really shitty. Young Danny learned to play guitar, and he wrote his own songs. He kind of wanted to be a country singer for a little while. He was also a not-so-smooth criminal. He was arrested several times for robbery and was once caught spying on a woman while she was getting dressed.
Ugh.
He was a peeping Danny, everybody. He dabbled in drugs and booze, and his school counselors described him, and this is a quote, suffering from inferiority complex with aggressive tendencies and poor impulse control. Dude is fucked up, or I should say was. Spoiler, was. He really didn't know what to do with his life. He enlisted in the Air Force, but he was kicked out pretty quickly for drug possession. Following his discharge from the military, he did manage to actually meet someone and get married. And her name was Omather Halco. That's a real name. And they had a daughter. At age 23, after being with his wife for 4 years, she separated from him because he threatened to kill her. I'm like, good call, lady. Good call. Fucking red flag. Yeah, that shit's kind of a deal breaker. So she left him. And instead of dealing with that shit like a grown-ass man, he went out and he raped a woman who looked a lot like his ex-wife.
Oh, God.
Mm-hmm. And then he went on a robbery spree, and that landed him in jail. This was 1979. So he did a little bit of time. And then throughout the 80s, he was just in and out of jail, mainly in Alabama, Mississippi, all for armed robbery. He would do stints in jail. He would get out. He would commit more robberies, raping a few women along the way. By the way, never charged with a lot of these rapes. He was never really caught for them, but confessed to a lot of things later.
Gotcha.
He went back to Shreveport. He got a job as a waiter at a Mexican restaurant. That horrifies me to think that this man was serving food to people. I'm like, oh, fucking monster. Anyway, on the night of November 4th, 1989, he got fired from the restaurant, you know, for reasons, probably because he's a fucking monster. And they were like, get the fuck out of here. So he's fired. And on his way home, he decided to stop and break into a house. And he murdered a woman named Julie Grissom. She was 24. Her 8-year-old nephew, Sean, and her 55-year-old father, Tom.
Holy shit.
Yes. And Julie, here's the thing. He most likely was not interested in the son or the nephew or the father. He was there for Julie. And Julie was posed on the bed and her hair, like, I know, Max, it's very upsetting. So her feet are on the ground and she's like laying back on the bed and her hair is like fanned out. Put a pin in that because this is important. That's important.
Okay. And
he got away with that crime for years. The police didn't have any leads. The case went cold. So a year later, Now 26-year-old Danny, he's living with his parents, and he got into a huge fight with his father. His father's monster, we already established this, chased him out of the house with a shotgun. And then Danny turned around and shot his father right between the eyes.
Oh my God.
Yes, but low caliber handgun. So straight, his father survived. How does he survive that? I don't know.
It's hard to kill pure evil, I guess.
Right? Exactly. That's what I thought.
Michael Myers.
Yes, exactly.
A blowtorch doesn't work. Yeah.
You fucking get it. Evil didn't die tonight.
Oh my.
That's what.
Holy shit.
His father lost an eye and an ear, but he survived.
I'm sure it didn't do a lot for his disposition, did it?
No, I'm sure he was super nice after that happened. His father, police came, Danny went on the run. So he's on the run. He changed his identity with some papers that he stole from someone's house, and he fled town. He took a bus to Sarasota, Florida, and he started a new life as Michael Kennedy Jr. He was a Kennedy. Kennedy. This is like late 1990, or sorry, July 1990. His new life involved basically he camped in the woods around Gainesville, Florida. And Gainesville, for people who don't know, and I did not know, was a college town. And it was kind of like a small town vibe during, the fall and winter, spring, super busy, summer, empty, surrounded by woods all around it. He's there camping in these woods, and students are coming to town for the start of the new semester. And Christina Powell, she was 17, and Sonia Larson, 18. They got this apartment together, and it was their first night in their new apartment. Mm-hmm. The phone hadn't even been installed yet. By the way, when you were in college, did you ever set up you get your apartment and you don't have your phone or a cable?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really weird time in your apartment.
It's very quiet. There's no internet. There's nothing to occupy. You don't have a phone to occupy you. Yeah, you have to do other things. You have to read.
Yeah. Ew, you have to read. Blah. Anyway, it's a weird time in your house. So Danny broke into their apartment, and his thing was he used a screwdriver to get in through a sliding glass door. Mm-hmm. By the way, did all this research. I live in a house with a sliding glass door.
Oh, God, no.
I am so fucked up about that sliding glass door now. I'm propping it with things, sticking brooms in there to keep it super shut. This one messed with my head.
Good idea.
So, yeah. So he breaks in with this screwdriver and sliding glass door. Christina's sleeping on the couch, but he just passes her by, just walks right by her, goes right upstairs. And he finds Sonia asleep in her bed. He tapes her mouth shut. Tapes her wrist. This is all with duct tape, and he stabs her to death.
Oh, Jesus.
Really, really gruesome. And then he went downstairs, tapes up Christina, and he rapes her, and he stabs her in the back. And then both of them, he poses their body.
Oy.
He took a shower before he left. Fucking monster. Ugh. Fucking monster. The next day, the family and friends of these girls couldn't get a hold of them. Christina's parents came to town because they were like, we can't get a hold of them. It's super weird. Got a maintenance worker to let them in.
Oh, no.
And the maintenance worker went in first, and he saw everything, and he ran out, and he threw up all over the place.
Jesus.
And the parents were like, what the fuck? And that's how they discovered what happened. Isn't that awful?
Oh,
it's
that's
awful. And the police officers came, they have said it's one of the most gruesome crime scenes they had ever seen. It's awful. Oh. So the morning after he murdered murdered Christina and Sonia, he broke into another apartment, an 18-year-old named Krista Hoyt. And he did the same thing, taped her mouth, her wrists. He raped her. He stabbed her multiple times. And it's this really long, hunting knife.
Oh, God.
Yeah. After the murder, he went back to his campsite in the woods. And then he realized he couldn't find his wallet. And he starts freaking out. Shit, I left my wallet at the crime scene. So he goes back to Krista's apartment. And while he's there, I guess he finds his wallet. And he decapitates her. This dude's a fucking monster. By the way, the town is freaking out now. They have a serial killer on their hands, and all these kids are like rolling into town for college. And this is happening. Parents start coming to town, picking up their kids and leaving.
Yeah.
Kids that can't leave are bunking up together. Some of them, there's like 6, 8 of them in an apartment together, taking turns staying awake.
What year is
they're
this again?
so afraid. This is 1990.
Oh, God.
They're petrified.
Yeah.
There's all these news clips of like, we're talking young, some 17, 18,
Yeah,
19.
yeah.
They're buying guns. They're so scared.
Yeah.
It's really sad and awful. 3 days later, there's 2 more murders. Manuel Tobora and Tracy Pauls, both 23 roommates, once again, just moved into their new apartment. He broke in through the sliding glass door. He found Manuel asleep in one of the bedrooms, killed him right away after a struggle. He really wanted Tracy once again, did the same thing, taped her up, raped her, murdered, same pattern with the hair on the bed and all of that. It's awful. That's his thing. The screwdriver to break in through the sliding glass door. He uses the long knife like you see in Scream, by the way. That's, I think, one of the inspirations there. He rapes, he stabs, and he poses all the women's bodies. And all of the female victims were petite, Caucasian brunettes with brown eyes, just like his ex-wife. While the police, this is like a huge case, obviously. And so now like the FBI is involved, and like local, like police, like surrounding police are involved, and they're all like processing these crime scenes, and they're not used to this. This is not something that happens there. And in the middle of all this, there's a bank robbery.
Oh, boy.
And yeah. And so a police officer responds to that. He sees like a suspicious man in the woods and he follows him, but he loses track of the man. But he finds the money from the bank and he finds Danny Rolling's campsite. And he found a gun, a screwdriver, and a cassette recorder. But since their murderer didn't use a gun and they didn't realize about the screwdriver, they didn't think it was related.
Oh, for God's sakes.
Yeah. No one even listened. There's a tape in the tape recorder and they don't listen to it. And they're so focused on the murder. They're like, we're going to deal with this later. And so all of this evidence that would have helped them crack the case is sitting in their evidence room. It's bananas.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So a few months later, this woman from Shreveport, Cindy Jurich, I believe that's how you pronounce it, was in Florida on vacation. She was just there on vacation. She's from Shreveport. She's there on vacation. And she hears about the murders on the local news. And she's like, gosh, that sounds just like that unsolved murder in Shreveport. She always suspected Danny Rolling was involved in the murders back in Shreveport. And she wondered that. She's like, I wonder if Danny Rolling's in Florida. Because it sounds, she suspected him. And the reason she suspected him was one time he told her husband that he likes to stick people with knives.
Ay, ay, ay.
Yeah, fucking red flag, right? Red flag. She contacts the police and is like, hey, did you know that there was a murder just like this in Shreveport? They did not know there was a murder just like this in Shreveport. Someone goes up to Shreveport. It turns out Danny this is gross. He's a secretor, so with his like semen samples, there was like blood and they could test it. And it turns out it's the same guy.
Wow.
They didn't even put it together. This woman put it together. It's fascinating. So then, totally random, someone decides, I'm going to go through the bank robbery evidence. They go through it and they listen to the tape. There was blood at the campsite too. Turns out it was his blood. So they match the blood from Shreveport and the murders in Gainesville. And they're like, holy shit, this campsite was the murderer. So they go in, they start looking at all the evidence. They listen to the tape. And on the tape is Danny singing one of his own country songs, and it's called Mystery Writer. And it's like, you're a killer, a drifter gone insane. You're a rebel no one can tame. And he actually refers to his like full name. He refers to himself as Danny Rolling, like on it. So now it's all tied together. And he actually signs off of the tape like, I gotta go, I have something to do. And investigators think that that's when he left and he went and murdered Manuel and Tracy.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
He just had to sing his little song first and as like an opener.
Dude, I hope he didn't sing to them first. I'm like they're not going to suffer enough. They have to sit through his shit too. Fuck that. Sit through his fucking open mic night.
Well, what's the movie with Robert Mitchum where he sings when he walks around? It's this black and white film.
Ooh, is it Night of the Hunter?
Night of the Hunter, yeah. Yeah, and it's very creepy because he's like singing these hymnals as he walks around. Yeah. That's what I'm getting. That's the kind of vibe.
What? I wonder if he's seen that movie because turns out dude likes to take things from movies and try to pass it off as his own. So we're going to get to that.
Yeah.
We're going to get to that in like literally 2 minutes. So they find Danny. They arrest him. This is now November 1991. He is charged with the murders. And originally he pled not guilty. And then on the first day of the trial, he changed his plea to guilty. And they had to continue the trial anyway to decide if he should get the death penalty. So during the trial, Danny claimed that he had multiple personalities. And one was named, I can't even pronounce it, but it's Danny spelled backwards. And the other one was named Gemini.
And Yandy?
Yes. Gemini is the one who told him to do bad things.
Huh.
And he described it like this, like it was like a fog that would take him over. Turns out it's all from The Exorcist 3. He watched The Exorcist 3 in prison or something, and he stole all of it and he tried to use it as his own story. And obviously, like, he's in court. He's telling this bullshit story, and then someone's like, that's from The Exorcist 3. Like, fucking asshole. He's a murderer and a rapist, and he plagiarizes.
Yeah.
Fuck this guy.
I was gonna say, yeah.
So during the trial, he met this true crime author named Sandra London. Does this name sound familiar at all? I never heard of her before. So it turned out she's kind of a serial killer fucker. Is that a thing?
There's a groupie for everything. You know this, right?
So she was the former girlfriend of a convicted murderer and suspected serial killer, G.J. Schaefer, who I don't know anything about him. And then eventually she's the fiance of Danny Rolling. She met him because she wanted to write a book, and she says she fell in love with him and they got engaged. And one day it's all that singing. Funny you should mention that. So one day in court, Rolling stands up and he says he wants to issue a statement. And the family of all of his victims, they're in the court and they're like, they want some closure so bad. And they're like, he's issuing a statement like, maybe we're going to get it. And instead he sang a love song that he wrote about Sandra. And the fucking court lets him finish.
Oh my God.
Once again, these families have suffered enough, and now they have to sit through his fucking open mic night bullshit. It sucked. All these people are murdered. I don't know. He's just being fucking comical.
No, Ted Bundy did that in court. He proposed to his fiance during trial.
Yeah. It's fucking gross.
He's stealing from everybody.
Gross. Yes. Sandra London actually did write a book with him. It's called The Making of a Serial Killer, The Real Story of the Gainesville Murders. He confesses to all the murders in the book. He confesses to a bunch of other crimes. It includes a bunch of his drawings. I didn't read it because gross. I don't want to read it. So in 1994, he was sentenced to death. And on October 25th, 2006, he was actually put to death by lethal injection. 47 people witnessed his execution. That's like double the capacity that they allow in that room. Like, people were cramming in there to watch him die. And I don't know how people feel about the death penalty, and I'm not going to get all political, but
yeah,
When they interview these people, your heart just breaks for them.
Right.
You know, is this going to make them feel better? Probably not, but I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Are you one of those people, Margot, that likes to hear what people ate for their last meal?
I'm always curious. Yes.
Yeah, there used to be a website, I don't know if it exists anymore, that used to like break down what people had for their last meals. And I was kind of fascinated that so many people like Dr. Pepper.
Dr. Pepper's delicious.
It is, but like I'm fascinated that so many people would pick Dr. Pepper as in part of their last meal. Anyway,
I thought it was
last
meal. It fried chicken or is it steak?
This one was a lobster tail.
Oh.
Butterfly shrimp, baked potato, sour cream, butter, strawberry cheesecake, and sweet tea.
I hate sweet tea.
Yeah, I only mention this because I know some people like to know that stuff. Mm-hmm. In his final moments, he didn't acknowledge or speak to the families. He sang a fucking song, you know, just to make them fucking suffer again one more time before he dies. So after the trial, there was a 2020 episode on ABC about this case. And that's where screenwriter Kevin Williamson watched. He watched it and he noticed an open window in his living room. And he was thinking about how easy it would be for people to enter his house and harm him. That's what inspired him to write a script for a movie that he was calling Scary Movie.
Okay.
Which would eventually become Scream.
Oh, okay.
There aren't like a ton of similarities between the Gainesville Ripper and Ghostface. Ghostface, by the way, if you haven't seen Scream, is the killer or
Spoiler.
Is the killer, killer or killers in all the Scream movies, because there's 4 Scream movies and there's going to be 5. But I would say like the similarities are like the murder weapon, how they break into the houses, and kind of that flair for posing dead victims, because that is a thing in the Scream movies. They're always like posing these people. So that's our creep. Danny Rolling, the Gainesville Ripper, and the inspiration for Scream.
What a shithead.
Isn't he?
He's gross.
Awful.
And
he's
singing
awful
to the families. Like, Jesus Christ.
Once again, they haven't suffered enough.
All right, Sonia.
I'm so happy that this one's done. I don't want to ever pick this kind of thing again. This sucked. I'm so sorry. Oh, give me a non-creep, please.
Okay, here we go. So, non-creep on the way. Wes Craven is our non-creep. He is the director of the movie Scream, born August 2nd, 1939 in Cleveland, Ohio. He grew up in a family. His father died when he was very young, like 4 years old, I think it was. His parents were Baptists and very, very religious. He was not. He eventually left. He was actually a professor for a while, and a professor of humanities. And then he became friends with Harry Chapin's brother.
Oh.
Now, yeah. So we talked about Harry Chapin. He was one of our non-creeps for one of our episodes. Maybe the Ted Nugent one that's like missing. Sorry, you guys. We lost our Ted Nugent episode. I know. It just disappeared.
So weird.
I don't know. I must have deleted it by accident. He became friends with his brother, Harry's brother. And Harry's brother was working in the film industry. And he just decided, I think I want to work in the film industry. He was getting bored with being a professor. And he started film editing right away. Let's say 70s, Wes Craven apparently got his start in pornographic films, which it's a living, people, consenting adults and all that stuff.
Sure.
I have no problem with it. I do have a problem with the movie that he did called The Last House on the Left, which was released in 1972. It's pretty gruesome to watch. I
haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And it was remade in 2009. It's not my jam. He's also, by the way, known as other names: Abe Snake, Guru of Gore, Master of Horror, and Sultan of Shock. Okay.
Are those legal aliases?
I believe they're all on his tombstone. He also he created The Hills Have Eyes, The People Under the Stairs. Swamp Thing was a DC comic. He turned that into a movie. The Serpent and the Rainbow was one of my favorites. He also directed, surprisingly, a movie called Vampire in Brooklyn, which I'm writing a movie about films in Brooklyn, not filmed in Brooklyn. Which is one of the reasons why it doesn't succeed. And he also began in 1984. And by then, he was really struggling with his film career. He hadn't had a hit in a long time. And he just sort of went back to sort of nightmare images from his youth. And he created A Nightmare on Elm Street in 1984. Those films have been
good.
I love those, and I super love those movies. I think they're great. I think Freddy Krueger is just one of the most interesting villains ever created for a movie. He gave Johnny Depp his start, Heather Langenkamp. He gave a lot of people, they were unknown actors. I mean, Heather, well, she was on, what was that show he's on? That was about the family that had like 10 kids. Do you remember that? It was an ABC family show.
Oh, what was that show?
The coach from, it was about a coach. Anyway, she was on that show.
I know. It was called like Just the 10 of Us.
Just the 10 of Us. There was like 10 kids, and she was also in that one. It was, anyway. I remember Nightmare on Elm Street. It was a big deal, especially when that came out on video.
Such a big deal.
Oh my God, you could not rent it. He went on to make Music of the Heart, which is Meryl Streep's movie. And the one time that he was nominated for an Academy Award, it was for Meryl Streep's performance. He wanted to get out of the horror genre. He tried to at times, but it's one of those like the mafia. It always drew him back in. In 1995, he was awarded a Life Career Award by the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films. Married 3 times. Sad to say, he passed away in 2015 to a brain tumor. At his funeral, this is the people who were at his funeral: David Arquette, Angela Bassett, Bruce Campbell, Nev Campbell, John Carpenter, Courtney Cox, Joe Dante, Johnny Depp, Robert Englund, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Christy Swanson. He did that movie with her, the Friend movie.
Oh, Deadly Friend.
Deadly Friend with Matthew Labrato. Yeah. He also, I forgot to mention, is that he directed the Scream movies. He directed 4 of them. We had kind of a conflicted relationship. On the one hand, it made him a lot of money. It made him cool again. But he kind of was getting burnt out on that. It would have been interesting if he had lived longer. He lived to 76. That's a pretty decent lifespan.
Yeah, it's so strange. 76 still feels young.
Yeah, it feels like a ripoff.
Like too young to die. Like we could have got a couple more movies.
Yeah.
And I was bummed. I'm like, I would
Yeah.
have loved to have seen what he did next, because his name meant something to me. Like things like Deadly Friend. Maybe I would have seen Deadly Friend anyway. But when his name was on something, I was like, oh, cool.
It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
It'll be fun. Yeah, The Serpent and the Rainbow is one of my favorites. That's a really good one. Vampire in Brooklyn is not that great, but the rest of them are really pretty amazing. Like I said, actors loved him. He gave actors a chance. He gave them, like some of them, it was their first big break. That is our non-creep this week, Wes Craven.
Good one, Margot.
Figured wrap it up in a bow. This is our Halloween episode, everybody. Thank you so much for supporting us. Thank you, all of you that joined the Patreon page. Once again, we have a couple of options there. So, do you want to talk about Dorking Out, our other show?
Yes. We are going to be doing our last scary movie for October. We're going to be talking about arachnophobia. It's making me itchy and nervous just thinking about it, because spiders really creep me out. But I do remember really liking this movie, so I'm excited for the rewatch. And then we'll go into November, where we're going to start destroying some childhoods. I'll just say that.
And if you have any suggestions or comments for us for creeps or non-creeps, reach out to us on social media. We love it when you use the Annie Potts GIF. We got one. That's for Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or send us an email, whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com. Probably the best place, because that's why we'll remember it sometimes.
Yes.
Yes. Please join our Facebook group. It's What a Creep Podcast Group. You do have 3 questions you have to answer, but come on in. It's a nice place to hang out.
Yes.
And Sonia, where can they find you?
You can find me at thesoniashow.com and The Sonia Show on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok, where I mainly make videos about my dogs. Where can people find you, Margot?
I'm at Brooklyn Fit Chick on Twitter and Instagram. My site is brooklynfitchick.com. And in the meantime, everybody, happy Halloween. Stay safe. Don't be a creep.
Creep. Thank you for listening to us talk about creeps. You can follow us at What a Creep Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
But don't follow us too closely.
You can email us your creepy stories at whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com.
But please keep your dick pics to yourself.